everybody. Welcome back to the Chronicles of the Range Monkey. I'm your host, Natalie, here with my personal coach, Chris Bean. Today, we're going to be talking about setting a schedule, setting yourself up for success, and refining your goals. So, come on.
You need a shot timer because that which gets measured gets worked on. The Range Tech Timer is the official timer of active self-protection because it is versatile, reliable, feature-rich, and very economical. Check out all it can do at the link below.
So yeah, I guess just to kind of start from where we left off, we talked about kind of reasonable goal setting and what that process looks like. So really, I think we're at the point now where we really need to kind of put the goal to paper, understand kind of what that means, go back and talk about why is that important to us, and then really formulate the plan on how we go about achieving that. So once you have like that plan kind of set in place, and going back to all the smart stuff we talked about before, where is it reasonable? Is it relevant to what we're doing? All these things, then we can start kind of attacking it and making it happen. So that's where I think we're at now. So with that, have you figured out really what you want your goal to be?
Yes. So, my goal is I want to refine my draw to where I am consistently hitting a B8 target at 7 yards. Let's see, 10 ring or better. And I want to be under that 1.25 second part time, which
Okay.
I realize is a pretty hefty goal, but that's where I want to be eventually. So that's what I'm going to set my overarching goal as.
Yeah, and I don't know that that's an unreasonable goal. That is a world-class time. That is straight up a B8 10 ringer better at 7 at 1.25. You're getting into a world-class level of accuracy with that level of speed.
What
Um,
I try for.
yeah, so and I don't think that your skill set is so far off from that. So I think what we need to put in there is what do we believe the reasonable amount of time is to achieve that goal? 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, whatever, but we need to kind of lay something out there on because that's really what's going to drive the motivational part of the work. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you have
So,
something in front of you to go for this, you won't, I'll put it off till next week, you know?
right. Yeah. So for me, it feels like I really want to set this really high goal and I really want to make it. And I know that it's going to take time. I know that I need to kind of stair step my way up to
Mhm,
it.
mhm.
Um I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how long that's going to take. I feel like maybe if I work on this and I stick to my schedule, then I could maybe have this done in like a month,
Okay.
maybe. If I'm working, 3 times a week for, 15, 20 minutes each, I feel like I can reassess at a month.
And
And
but that's an important point that you're making right there. So when we initially make a goal, there should be constant reassessment going on because the last thing you want to do is have that goal be so daunting to you once you get into the actual process flow of it that it just makes you quit. That's the quit quotient. I that was a mistake to make this goal. I set the bar too high. I set the bar too low. That's how people walk away from work. That's how you get burnout. That's how it just doesn't happen. So I would implore you, once we get this plan kind of put into place, once a week or so, really assess it. Honestly assess what you're feeling, what you're seeing, what you're thinking, and we'll apply whatever corrections necessary. But don't be afraid to change the goal because what we don't want is you to quit. So if we get to a point where like, all right, well, 1.25 is a little steep in a month, what can we easily change there? The timeline, right?
yeah,
That's the easiest thing to change. As long as we're making progress, we're like, okay, well, the timeline was a little bit aggressive when we initially started this or not. Who knows? You have other parameters that you can assess and change. You could be like, okay, well, 1.25 in this timeline might be a rush, but maybe we could try 1.4. And
yeah,
none of that's a negative. So all we're trying to do is create like a commitment to do work. And then
Okay.
everything else is things we can tweak to make the most sense in our progression. But the key is progression. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Excellent.
So we're setting this goal so that and we're setting the timeline so that at the end of this month I can see if I've hit my goal or not and
Hmm.
reassess and
Hmm.
figure out what I mean in theory the next goal would be.
Yep. And
Okay.
that's the other thing I really like to do too. So we've got goals and objectives, right? The goal is the overarching thing that you're trying to achieve, and then you have objectives, which are kind of benchmarks along the way. But I kind of look at overarching goals because I'm constantly in like a growth mindset kind of way. So my goals constantly are in flux and constantly pushing, 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 pushing. So I've kind of grouped those two things, the goals and objectives, together because I never stop, which is a good thing and a bad thing. But uh, so I think really in a month we'll see exactly where we're at. We'll see exactly what progress was made, and that's the important part: measuring the progress and owning and celebrating the progress, because that's the key to this whole thing. I cannot stress that enough.
Right.
Um, and then we'll see. I wouldn't put it past you to get down to a second below a second with these same accuracy standards. But we've got to kind of work our way into it. So this
Yeah.
is, like we spoke about before, scalable till the nth degree. You could scale it. Who knows? 6 months from now, we could be talking. You're like, you know what? I want to try like a 0.70 or a 0.75 at this. And cool. I wouldn't start with that kind of goal. Is if you're really wanting to improve accuracy, you're putting too much speed on it.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but if it's kind of a mixture of both, or learning how to throttle both, I think it's reasonable what you're trying to do. So,
Yeah. And half of my goal is that I want to refine my draw so that I'm consistently hitting. And then the rest of my goal is all of my parameters. But my
mhm,
main part is that I want to refine my draw because I've been focusing on everything else and speed and accuracy for so long. Like, I want to get 1.25, which is pretty average for me. And I want to be getting 10 ring or better, which is pretty average for me. The hard part about this goal is the draw and finding my dot. That's what I haven't been focusing on for the last year
right.
because it kind of became a subconscious effort. Uh, so how do I get to there? How do I get to this goal? I have my schedule. I We talked about making a 5-day rotation,
Yep.
and the times that I have open are Tuesday at 10 a.m. for 15 minutes. We talked about Me and Chris talked a little bit off camera about uh how I probably don't need to set aside, 2 hours every other day, every week, because that's over trying. But Tuesday at 10 a.m. for 15 minutes, Friday at noon for 15 minutes, and then Saturday either in the morning or the evening, depending on what I've got going on, for 30 minutes. I know that I'm not the only one that has a ridiculously busy life that you can never seem to fit dry fire into. So I'm hoping that everybody who's watching can kind of relate to only having a little bit of time. So I'm hoping that's all right. But those are my parameters. So how do I get to my goal with only having like an hour a week to work on it?
Oh, well, this is actually good. So you've designated what you have available, right?
Yes. I'm
And
going to
equate,
commit fully to it for those
and that
increments.
that equates to an hour a week. So to me, what we've said, the timeline of the 1 month, we have 4 hours of dedicated practice. That's a lot. That's a lot. So don't, when you hear it like that, you're like, oh, that's not much. But 4 hours of deliberate, dedicated practice is a lot.
Yep.
So if we think about it in just terms of draw, what we're really, really trying to work on, and a draw takes you roughly 1 to 1.5 seconds. As long as you're invested in it, how many repetitions are you going to be able to pull off in 4 hours? A lot,
A lot.
right? So that's the one thing I want to kind of clarify with your timing. I'm perfectly cool with your time. I think we're staying in the recency standards of like sub 72 hours, give or take. And so you're continuing to build. You're not going to build skill and then drop it off. You're not going to build skill, drop it off. You're staying in the rotation.
Yeah, I tried to keep them a little bit stagnant. And like with my work week, that's kind of at the beginning and end and middle. So hoping this works for me. And I think a lot of this is building the right schedule to work for you specifically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think we've talked about it in the past, but I went for years doing about 2 to 2.5 hours a day of dry fire. And what that did for me was made me basically burn out and just tear up my body. You know, I was biting off more, and I was so absolutely dedicated that I didn't make sound decisions for growth. So a lot of it became repetition for repetition's sake. So really smaller pieces of time. But when you walk in, what I suggest with these 15 to 30-minute sessions, especially the 15s, you walk in, and the moment you walk into your dry fire space, the rest of the world is off. You have 15 minutes that you are dedicating to this.
Yep.
So, however many reps, and here's the other thing I want you to think about, is if you go into that 15-minute session and it's just not working, you're drawing the gun to draw the gun, you're not making any progress, you're not seeing your dot, you're just things aren't working, stop. Don't just do it for doing its sake, because that means nothing. It's just repetition for repetition's sake, and the repetitions will be bad.
Okay. That makes sense. Sounds
So,
like you're speaking from experience
oh
with
yeah, oh trust me. And then we'll be breaking bad habits, and that's what we don't want to do. We want to build good habits. We don't want to break bad habits. So every rep in that 15-minute session needs to be mindful, and you need to be 100% in it. Like up to and including the point that you can articulate to yourself or to me everything, every behavior of the dot, every over tension in your shoulders, everything you're doing, where the dot landed when it came onto target, where it went as you pulled the trigger. That's the level of engagement you need to have with the time that we have to get the most growth. Does that make
yeah.
sense?
Yeah, because I mean, 15 minutes when you're talking about drawing your gun, like you said, you can get a lot of reps in there, but
Oh, a lot.
then you kind of get comfortable with it and then you start losing a couple minutes here and there. So, yeah, I just wrote down be mindful every single session.
Yep. Like
And
what I try and do when I dry fire a lot of times. So what you'll see a lot of times with people when they dry fire, especially as they're getting faster or they're achieving what it is they're trying to achieve, they'll do the rep, snatch the gun back. And then that rep just disappeared into the ether. Like there was no mindful understanding of what they just saw, no ability to articulate what they just saw. And that really goes against the ethos of dry fire. So I would much rather see versus 1, 2, 3 to go, boom. Okay, so I saw my dot drop in from 1 o'clock. I saw a slight drop when I pulled the trigger. However, it stayed in the target. Good rep. Okay, cool. 1, boom. Okay, I saw it drop in straight from 12 o'clock, but it dropped out. Okay, so I know that shot probably went out of the acceptable target zone for me. And then this is key. What do I need to do to fix that? Not, oh, bad rep, put my stuff away. No, what do I need to do to fix that? What is the correction? Next rep, apply the correction. And then what'll eventually happen is no more corrections are needed. Then it becomes subconscious repetition. So it's just cementing. That's the same thing when you see shooters on the line that throw a bad shot, and immediately after the shot is thrown, they're looking over their sights, they see it, and they start the beat up process. So you're literally imprinting the negative thing that just happened instead of saying, okay, that happened, it's data, apply a correction, and then the next time. So instead of going, because how's your brain work? If your brain work says, I need to do something, you will do it.
Mhm.
If you're caught up in going, that last one was bad, you know what's going to happen on the next one? It's going to be bad. The next one's going to be bad.
Yeah, because I'm a bad shooter and it's like me
Yeah,
to shoot bad. Yeah.
sure. So that's
No.
so bad reps happen. I mean, it happens to me all the time. I'll stuff a gun in a draw. It just won't be exactly where I want it to be, and I'll send it anyway because I'm impatient by nature. Those things are going to happen, but articulating it to yourself as a correction, not a critique. It is literally a method of correction. Then those things will start to fade and they'll become less and less and less and less, and your consistency will grow.
Right, yeah. Something that I learned in Brian Hill's class that I took, and it was instructor development.
Mhm,
He was teaching about emotionless correction,
mhm.
and that really spoke volumes to me because I've always, I don't know, I haven't been shooting for honestly that long, so I haven't been able to put a lot of this into practice. So when I have a bad shot, subconsciously just I'm such a bad shooter, kind of nudge myself in my own head, and that's not what you're supposed to be doing. I
Yeah,
didn't I didn't know that until Brian Hill taught me that. And then when we were at the active self-protection cohort, the in-person training, something that I was kind of trying to learn between me and Liz was that I don't have to beat my high score every time. It's okay. And that was kind of my first beginning steps towards looking at my mistakes like data rather than looking at my mistakes like mistakes. Because you don't have to beat your high score every time. And I feel like that was a good place for me to start that journey.
mhm.
And so I'm excited to kind of put that into practice with this scheduling
Yeah,
stuff.
and the way that we'll build the plan, uh, it will begin to make sense like that because I'm going to ask you um, really to start logging data and logging things that so we can actually discuss and articulate what's happening in the training. Um, and this is the differentiator between mediocre, good, and great. You know, mindful and thoughtful preparation, training, and practice is where great shooters come from. Now,
Okay.
good shooters, you can have good shooters all day that may have an innate ability to either be quick or be, accurate, however you want to slice it. But the consistency won't be there because the external factors will kind of drive on them. When you have a dedicated training plan that you're working towards, the external factors don't really matter as much because you have built it so deep into who you are as a shooter, you just know. You know what you can do. And if you have a bad run or a bad repetition, iteration, however you want to frame it, it's not the norm, it's the outlier. And you treat it as such. Outliers require correction, not critique.
There we go. Solid advice. All right. Well, I think that kind of wraps up us talking about the scheduling portion. So I think this is probably a good place to stop it. Thanks for hanging out with me, Chris, and walking
Any
me through that a little bit, trying to set me up for success. All
anytime.
right. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next week.